Hello and welcome to another edition of Fides Podcast. My name is Jerry Serino and I'm your host, and I'm here with talent on loan from Rush. We have a lot of issues and topics going on in this country, and there is so much confusion, honestly. And part of that is a dishonest media that is not really capable of covering things accurately or fairly or anything like that. So having an insider, someone who has been there, done that, experienced it, it's always good to have on to talk about all these issues. And I am very honored to have retired Senator Mike Morrell from California, state senator from California. You can't get any tougher than that than being in California, of course. But he was very, very successful as a state senator there, and is here to talk about some really important issues, things that I am passionate about, and I think many of you are, and also about his new book. So, Senator Mike Morrell, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me. And yes, California had its challenges. Very difficult to sit on 2 days a week on floor sessions and the other 2 days in committees and hear all the bad bills against family, against men, all the sex perversions in school, and then high taxes, limits what business can do is tough. But there was one thing that just I loved. I would speak up and down California, Jerry. And there's a lot of wonderful people, a lot of wonderful conservatives in California who love God, country, and family. And so, I was born there. I think, at one time it was the only state with 21 missions. Focus on the Family was started there. Billy Graham got his start there. At one time, that was God's state, and I'm convinced God wants it back. But because as California goes, so goes the nation, and we have to stop what's going on there. So we've got a lot of work to do, not just here, but across America.
Yeah, and I know that we hear a lot from the left about turning Texas blue, changing some of these states, and I agree. I think if you look at the actual map of who votes, California is mostly red, just like most states are, just like the whole country is. It's just obviously these highly populated cities that, same thing you see, in New York, right? I mean, the very highly populated cities that vote Democrat and they sway the state. It is a wonderful state, beautiful state. And you're right, there are good people there. But it almost seems as though that California is almost on the forefront of the left. That New York, maybe Massachusetts as well. The things that happen there, the bad things seem to start there and then they trickle in. So I want to maybe kind of get into that. And you had mentioned a few things that California often does. We're seeing a lot that Governor Newsom is doing in regards to the gender issue and transitioning and everything under the sun. What is the moral attack that is happening, that is going on in California and other states as well?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, there is evil in the world. We're told our battle isn't against flesh and blood, but against principalities of darkness. And so whenever people go to the dark side, it usually starts with their personal morality or immorality. Congressman Fisher Ames in 1805 said, "All of history lies open for our warning, like a churchyard whose solemn lessons are chiseled into the hard stone of eternity, lessons that thunder to republics. Your passions and your vices forbid you to be free." And so that's why you see all the craziness go on. That's what immorality leads us to. And we can just see by the principles, our governor, as well as our friends across the aisle, for whatever reason, they want to promote this really bad stuff. Now, on the other side of the coin, there are some really wonderful things happening. It's the first time in my life, in your life, that we're seeing these parents wanting to return to the school boards and stop this social indoctrination, right? Especially the drag queen hour, which blows me away that grown men would actually call up a school, an elementary school, and say, "We want to dance provocatively in front of your young 5-year-olds." And then the schools let them in. This is wrong. This is evil. And so we do have parents trying to take these schools back, which is a good sign. So things are happening. But the thing is, in Governor Newsom, I think it's both Temecula School District and Chino Valley where they've taken a stand that actually parents should have a right to know what's in those books, right?
Mhm.
And then Governor Newsom comes along and wants to fine them now, like $1 million or something. And the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, who used to sit in front of me, he's going after him too. Because see, the left, here's the thing why we can win this battle. The politically correct speech, PC, has been around for thousands of years. They just call it different things. And the reason it comes about, it's when that side knows they cannot win the argument and they know they can't win. So what they have to do, if you notice what they do all across, even on the presidential thing, Trump and everything, they have to name call. They want accuse and a blame, blame and accuse. All they do is name call, name call, name call. They never, ever come up with any facts, any empirical data to win their case because they know they can't win. So that makes me, one of the things I tell people is we can win this debate, but we have to speak. When we're silent, it only emboldens evil. It only gives their side ammunition. And so we have to talk out because we can win the argument. There's a lot of people that are in the middle right now trying to figure out what's right versus wrong. And so us conservatives, people of faith, my fellow Republicans, we have to make the case. Just like Lincoln made his case, that's why he was a good statesman. Ronald Reagan made his case and was able to tear down the Iron Curtain that's setting 1.2 billion people free. Winston Churchill, he made the case. So we have to get better at telling those things. Scripture tells us that we're to demolish arguments, one of our responsibilities, and tear down every pretension that sets itself up against knowledge of God. So the best thing we can do is talk out against this immorality. And again, we can win on these arguments because the majority of parents are reasonable. They want their kids, their reason they're returning to school boards, they want their kids to learn, right? They want their kids to learn math, reading. I mean, we've fallen so far behind. We're approaching third world status. We used to be number one in education. I think in math, we're 34th now out of all the countries in the world. And in history and things like that, it's even getting worse. So we've got a lot of work to do. And I appreciate your show that you're asking those difficult questions.
Yeah, so I want to get from your perspective, being from California and having served in the state legislature. I've always felt that maybe, and again, these are just estimates and opinions, that maybe about 25% of the population are really truly hardcore leftist believers, right? And you have a certain percentage of people that have voted Democrats, and I'm thinking more along the lines of blue collar workers, union workers, even the rank and file teachers that are part of unions that have always voted Democrat, but in reality, their insides, their morality, the way they live their life is actually more conservative. When we speak out like I think Trump did, very, very boldly on the conservative issues and bring up things like the transgender and bathrooms and all this stuff, do you believe that that is pulling in those Democrats who I believe at heart are actually conservative?
Well, that's a good question. Um, 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 Polling would say it is pulling in some. More blacks now and Hispanics are coming to our side. So I think Donald Trump is making the case. The guy I like to look to who did, in my opinion, the best job was Ronald Reagan. He was very tough. If you ever listen to his words, he was very tough, but he always did things with a smile, nod of the head, and a wink of the eye as he was ripping people apart. And
Yeah.
so he was smoothing than Donald Trump. That's why he won by a landslide 49 out of 50 states. I mean, he won almost every precinct. And so again, that comes to make an argument. I think you're right. I mean, there are crazies out there that are never going to come to our side, right? But there's a lot of people like when I was up in the legislature, the most I ever saw come to the Capitol were these women, and I found that the majority of them were from the upper class, upper middle class, from the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and they came
Yeah.
up on those vaccinations because my understanding in California, the bill was to add where the Democrats could add more vaccinations for the kids, and right now we're already at 72 vaccinations that they want kids to have, and they made a compelling argument to me. These women that they asked how old I was, and they said back in your day the schools only required 5 to 6 vaccinations. And they're right. I had 6 of them, right? And then there's 74 million baby boomers, and we're still alive and well and healthy for the most part, right? And so we're missing
Yeah.
over 60 of those vaccinations. And so that made me think, wow, I wonder if there's something sinister going on here, because the people who were at the Capitol at the time lobbying were, of course, the pharmaceutical companies. But anyway, that made me realize those women cared a lot about their kids that come over from the Bay Area and advocate about that. And so I think the thing is, there's some low hanging fruit for us to get if we make the argument. And again, I think vaccinations should be left up to the parents. If you want all 72, that's up to you. I'm not going to try to talk anybody out of anything, but it is kind of weird that we've gone from 6 to 72, which is crazy. And now, they can add more because that bill did pass. And then it's up to who's ever in control of the legislatures. When in California, that's Democrats. Politicians can decide in California how many more vaccinations your kids get. So anyway, yeah, I do think there's hope. And I think right now, that's how I wrote my book. People are so angst up. Parents are angst up, because when I was growing up, there was only one or two issues going on in the country. Today, all of our foundations seem to be fractured. And so there's a lot of angst amongst people, especially against parents trying to raise their kids in this very difficult culture. They know in their soul that there's something bad going on, because I get a chance to talk to people all the time, and especially younger people. And so there is a lot of anxiety. And so I think we have a chance to capture those people, those middle ground people who do sway to the left. But again, we have to be out there clearly communicating those principles of limited constitutional government, which protects the rights of parents over government, how they're going to raise their children.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for bringing up your book. That's where we were going next. So a great segue. And for those watching,
I
I
didn't do
have
that
on the
on
bottom of
purpose.
the
Sorry.
screen, I have. Yeah, well, we knew I wanted to talk about it. So I have the title on the screen, and for those listening, it's called "The Road to Restoring the Family: Leaving an Inheritance to Our Children's Children." You can get that on Amazon. You could even just punch it in with Mike's name into Google or your search engine, and find it here. I have it up here on my right on my screen here, looking at it. A great looking cover. And, I think what's so important about the book, and what you were just talking about before we transitioned, is that so many of these problems that we face, whatever they are, have to, start in the family, right? We have a strong family structure. Nothing's perfect. No family is perfect. No parents are perfect, whatever. But the more conservative, in a sense, a family is and together, ultimately, there's less crime, there's less poverty, there are less problems. So let's start with the book, The Road to Restoring the Family. What prompted you ultimately to write it? And tell me about that writing process.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I Years ago, I had thought about that verse from Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon. The duty of the father is to leave an inheritance to our children's children, which goes beyond just the financial aspect. And so, as I turned out of the state, I was trying to think, what's my next thing that I do? And so, right now, by the way, you guys will be the first to hear. We have 8 grandkids, and we just had one at 5:30 this morning, another one for the 9th. So we're going over to
Oh,
see
great.
our daughter, yeah, in Phoenix. But anyway, as we accumulate these grandkids, I feel like I have a responsibility even more as a father. What's my duty? So what I decided to do is to try to write this book and give my kids the reminder to remind their kids, our grandkids, because it's a very difficult culture right now. Culture is against them. Everything seems to be against them. The media, popular culture, CRT, I mean, everything, school, education, and even religion in a lot of things. There's some churches that have gone user-friendly, seeker-sensitive, culturally irrelevant, and they don't deal with really the most important issues of the day. And so I wanted to give my kids, I wanted to increase their percentages, increase their odds of success in a very difficult environment. And so what I did is I took on the subjects of spirituality, morality, marriage, finances I talked about, also defending freedom and what are our constitutional duties. And also I wrote 3 chapters on education today. because that seems to be where a lot of the anxiousness is with people. But here's what I want you to know. I borrowed a phrase from the Declaration of Independence. As you know, it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That starts the second paragraph. The first paragraph right before then shows how we can find self-evident truth. And it says, according to the laws of nature, nature's God, meaning God places in the human nature and history the moral and divine law for everyone to see. And then ultimately, it's placed there by God. So what I did, instead of my wisdom, which is limited, I tried to stand on the shoulders of those that possess a superior wisdom than Mike Morrell. So when it came to matters on spirituality, I'd look to Aquinas, Augustine, C.S. Lewis, and of course the scriptures were applicable. And then on politics, I went to the home of politics, and that's Athens, right? And stood on the shoulders of Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. I even looked at the Romans, Cato and Marcus Aurelius, to see where they thought. And I looked all through history: Lincoln, Churchill, Ronald Reagan, and then of course I brought in the scriptures there. So the point I'm trying to make is I wanted to give my kids and grandkids the best possible advice. So I stood on the shoulders of those that possess a superior wisdom, and that's how I wrote the book. And so your second question was about writing the book and how hard was it, I think, or how long it took. It took a long time. I'm a little slow on things, but I wanted to research everything to get as many things as factual as I could. And so it took me months to write it. And then I had my son, who is a pretty smart guy, worked at the White House and the Supreme Court. And so he's a good writer. I had him edit it. A friend of his he went to college with, who's written 4 books, edit it. And I hired a young lady to edit it. And so I think I did about 9 edits by the time it was done. So it was a really slow process because I kept wanting to get it right and give the best possible advice. So again, people will prosper in this country, particularly our younger generation. Let me go back and just say something else that had me write the book. And you said it sort of earlier. A strong, stable family will make for a strong America. When you see the majority of men in prison, they come, and I have statistics on that. They come from fatherless homes. These young, pretty girls that get into prostitution typically have daddy issues. The whole thing. And so, but there's a quote that I love by Frederick Douglass. He expresses it so well. He said, "It's easier to build strong families than it is to have to repair broken men." And we could add on there today, broken women also. And so again, I thought this was a timely book for a time in our country where Americans hopefully can use this and find it value, because my goal is I hope it'll enrich the lives of their loved ones.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is the type of book we all need to read. And the topic is, I love how you incorporate the Constitution and philosophers and the Bible into it as well. So again, if you're watching, I actually shared my screen here to show you where you can get it on Amazon. Go to Amazon. It's inexpensive. It's easy and a great read, and certainly a great topic. So just go ahead into Amazon, check it out, and place your order. Get one for a friend if you think that the friend could benefit from it, because I'm certain that they can, and we can. I want to go, staying on this topic, because it is so important. It's so important that you wrote a book about it, and look at the issue that we're facing with family. And I have a firm belief that kids and traumatic experiences that they have in their life, exposure to sex, pornography, physical, sexual abuse, abandonment, whatever the case may be, lack of fathers, which is certainly a bad thing, as you stated, leads to problems in the future. We're now, as you kind of alluded to earlier about drag queens, we're having children being transitioned, including behind the backs of their parents. We're having drag queen shows, books, explicit books for children. It seems as though children are being groomed, by our society, by their schools, by other people. And I wonder about the impact of what it's going to be like for their future.
Well, Yeah, you know, the scriptures actually tell us a lot. History does too. Moses, when the children of Israel were leaving 430 years of captivity under the bondage and slavery of the Egyptian pharaohs, they're going to go to the promised land. And Moses says over 50 times in the book of Deuteronomy, which is only 34 chapters, he points out over 50 times you're going to be given prosperity and peace and safety in this new promised land. But over 50 times he warns them, you got to be careful, be careful, be careful. To be careful to follow those moral laws, decrees, and commands. You have to follow the divine law. That'll lead to your nation's prosperity as well as peace and safety. But anything contrary to that will lead to death, especially in the concept of immorality. And if you're not one who's into the scriptures, that's fine, because history reports the same thing, right? In other words, immorality is bad for a nation. And so our nation, we're at a critical point. We're kind of at the bottom of the ninth inning with a 3-2 pitch, and we got to make it. We got to save our country quick, because we cannot continue to go down this path, because it will get worse. There's a great reading in the book of Romans, chapter 1, by St. Paul, and he sort of talks about this unnatural sex and immorality. People are given over to a state of a reprobate mind, is one word he uses. Another word, a state of depravity. And then there's a list of items. He itemizes a list that they'll do every evil under the sun. I mean, liars, haters of God, haters of parents, just all sorts of things. And so here's one thing: when people come out of the closet, then they expose themselves, and that's one thing. You know, hypocrisy is somebody that does wrong, but they want to hide it. I actually kind of miss that, because now there's people who aren't hypocrites. I mean, they come out of the closet and they just expose and say everything they want to do wrong, like this transitioning thing. This is so evil. This is so wrong, to take rights away from parents. And just a side note, it's just not on the sex thing, this education. The whole thing seems to be moving towards a Marxist ideology in every subject. Even math now, they say, is racist, right? And it's designed to remove the parent and the child away from each other and give responsibility for the state over the child. And so that's wrong. It's evil. And so we can't go down that path, but that's the path we're going down. So getting back to coming out of the closet and exposing these things, once that happens and there's not a standard anymore where people aren't ashamed of the things they do, then they have to be groomers, because they have to justify their existence and their behavior. And so you're going to see more grooming, more grooming, more grooming. And after that, they're going to double down, and they're already doubling down, trying to take the rights of parents. Who would have ever thought that? And we as parents cannot stand for that. You know, part of flipping over the Constitution, one of my chapters, there's a reason it's called a government of, by, and for the people. It was never to be a government by government or ran by politicians. It's we, the people, have to take back our country. We're governed by consent. The Declaration of Independence says that, first time in a political document, that we're supposed to give our consent on how we want to be ruled. We have to remind the politicians they're our servants, not our masters. We have to take that thing back. And again, the Constitution goes on to say a government of, by, and for the people. And so the founders would have never blamed the politicians for what's going on. They would have said it's in the hands of the people. First time to have free government. And so we've got to exercise our civic responsibility and show up at these school board meetings or get involved with politics, or at the very least pray for our country, that God would heal our nation, because we're in a very precarious position and a very dangerous position if you look at the whole scope of history. And so that's another reason why we have to stand up and defend. And again, the reason I do it, the reason so many parents are getting involved. You mentioned about, buying a couple copies of my book, which I appreciate. One of the demographics I noticed are baby boomers are buying 2 to 5 copies of my book, and then they have me, address them or make them out to their kids, right? And so they're very concerned. I mean, the handwriting is on the wall, right? We see what history says. We know the direction this country is, but we have to pull it back. I don't think it's too late to pull it back, because there are a lot of things going on, positive things like parents wanting to take back the direction that the school boards are going. And you see other things. You see some revivals all throughout the country, even in Portland, which is kind of interesting. And so there's a lot that's going on right now, but we're right in the middle. Not sure if we're going to win or we're going to lose. A friend of mine, Dr. Arn, president of Hillsdale College, said we've entered the third great American crisis, and that's whether we're going to maintain our constitutional way of government or we're going to descend into a despotic government ruled by force and fear with an aggressive hostility towards people of faith as well as the free market. So we got to stand up, especially, an appeal to fathers. We've got to get rid of this, this assault against our masculinity.
Yeah. Well, so I want to conclude here as we're coming to an end, just with your, since you've really brought in the whole concept of God, of Scripture, of our philosophers, of the Constitution, of the importance of the Constitution, and the fact that it limits government. It ensures limitations on government by sort of enforcing these are our rights given by God, and government shall pass no law prohibiting freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and we go on and so forth. So, a lot of people, I think, just think that those are nice rules that some old people wearing wigs put together one day. Um, you know, based upon having, our founding fathers looked to the philosophers that you mentioned to come up with these things. How important is limited government, which is given to us in a sense by our Declaration and our Constitution? How important is limited government to the ultimate success of our country?
Yeah, look at it's half of the equation. George Washington was asked why the success of America and our genius and our prosperity. He said it's the first time in human history where the best of Jerusalem intersected Athens. What he means is the home of Jerusalem is faith or religion, and Athens is politics. So politics and religion go hand in hand. We're told not to talk about those two things, but he himself said those were the two items why it's important. So half of the equation is saving our country's faith. The other half is our Constitution, I believe. And if you look at that, I think, forgive me, I could be wrong, but I think it's Article 1 around Section 8, where it has government, where it says what the government can do. And it's limited to only like 17 or 18 articles. Half of them are on national defense. And then there's a few about business, but it's that government's got to stay out of the way of business. And so today, well, we used to have 3 branches of government. Today we have 4, and that's the bureaucratic state, unelected bureaucrats who thousands of bureaucracy who exercise power over you and me, over our gun rights, over our family, over our education. We have to get rid of those because that's not what the Constitution was. Again, we need to go back and reread those things because, again, you only see 17 or 18 articles that government is instructed to do. Anything outside of that is unconstitutional. We need to go back and so many Americans believe in the Constitution, but we haven't taken time to read it. And again, it limits government's power and it places the power back into the hands of we the people. So we have to be responsible. The first time in history that's ever happened. It's a gift from God, and we have to remember that, and we have to honor those things. And again, it's good to go back and reread it. Or Hillsdale College has an excellent course. It's a master's degree course for free online on the United States Constitution, and it's very interesting, and I think your viewers would enjoy it.
Yeah, love Hillsdale. Actually have the Imprimis sitting right next to me. The article that we get, I believe it's monthly. Hillsdale is phenomenal. Absolutely go and check that out. But also, check out Senator Mike Morrell's book, "The Road to Restoring the Family." Again, I have it on the screen here. Go check it out. Please purchase a copy and even multiple copies and give away. Really, really great stuff and very important. So thank you, Senator Morrell, for coming on and sharing your great beliefs and experiences. I really appreciate it.
I'm grateful for your show, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I hope I didn't over talk too much. I just get a little bit, I get on a roll and I have these beliefs, so I get a little crazy.
Love it. I never want to stop passion and truth. So fantastic, really great stuff. Thank you so much for all that you do and all the success, great success for your book. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Fides Podcast. Please check out all my podcasts and all the different podcast apps on YouTube, on Rumble, on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on rightamericamedia.com and on whkradio.com/podcasts. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.